Using facts to take on the woke politicians, triggered leftists, and the corporate media.
You just got to try harder not to suck.
Live across the fruited plain and from sea to shining sea, you're listening to the Wendy Bell radio program.
Welcome back, America, to the Wendy Bell radio program. Cruising into hour number 3 now. As always, honored and delighted to share as much time with you as you are willing to spend with us. I'm very interested in so much of what we're seeing going on in this country. We have companies like Carhartt now putting the squeeze on all of their employees. Regardless of your natural immunity, you must get this vaccine if you want to work here. The airlines, you know, how nice that Starbucks just did an about face and said, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. It's all about branding. And when you're talking about that, you need to have a branding expert on your team. I love having Marc Rudov on the show. He's a branding advisor to CEOs, the author of 3 books on branding, and a media commentator and a friend of the program. Marc, welcome back to the Wendy Bell Radio Show, sir.
Great to be here, Wendy.
You know, I look at what's going on. There's so much that I want to ask you, because I really wonder, first and foremost, as we were just marching through some of this terrible sound from the president yesterday, how do you sell as a branding expert to the Democratic Party? What would you say to them to help them dig out of this ditch? Can you?
No. The message is largely dependent on the messenger. And the messenger is terrible, and what he's selling is terrible. And the fact of the matter is you have to be able to walk your talk. So he made all of these promises, but the promises turned into garbage because the country's in the worst shape it's been in decades. So for him to continue to appear at the microphone to try to snow us, to convince us that what he's doing is working, is risible. Now, the thing is, you have to understand, why is he doing what he's doing? And the answer is the same for everybody. It's money. Joe Biden has never worked a day in his life. Kamala Harris has never worked a day in her life. Nancy Pelosi has never worked a day in her life. Chuck Schumer has never worked a day in his life. So our country is being led by people who have never had jobs. So everything that Biden does is based on his grifting experience. And he thinks because he's been there 50 years, we're just going to fall for the old grandpa routine. But it isn't working, because we have an open border, we have inflation, we have a lot of people out of work, we have the whole world disrespecting us. And so he's going to try to come up with that goofy smile and tell us everything's wonderful. So he can't sell it. He's not selling it. And the poll numbers reflect that.
I wonder if you were Jen Psaki, how would you go? I'm really interested to see what happens next, Marc, because she's
if I were Jen Psaki, I couldn't even look in the mirror. I wouldn't respect myself at all.
100%. And I had this conversation with producer Brock off camera where I said, you know what, I believe her days are numbered, because there is a point where the excrement sandwiches that you've been selling and gobbling yourself make you too full and you can't do it anymore.
But why are her days numbered? Who's going to do a better job than she is? I think she's doing an excellent job of covering for the garbage man. I mean, who's going to do a better job? You can't, you just can't do it. People are not that stupid. I mean, they're pretty stupid, but they're not stupid. They're not that stupid. But you have to look at what's going on globally. And Joe Biden is just a puzzle piece. You know, you were mentioning it before I came on about Carhartt. What is Carhartt doing? Carhartt is keeping the vaccine mandate. If you go to the Dun & Bradstreet page of Carhartt, it tells you how many employees it has, 5,300, and it's going to fire 2,000 of them. It tells you the annual revenues are almost $2 billion. And the most important thing is the ESG ranking, which is a 2, and the industry average is 2.44. So it's trying to increase its ESG ranking. For those of you who don't know what that is, we have this organization in Geneva, Switzerland called the World Economic Forum. It has created the ESG ranking, environmental, social, and governance. Let's explain what that is. Environmental means you have to believe in global warming. And if your company's not doing enough to get rid of global warming, which of course is a joke, then you get a low ESG ranking. Social, that means you have to hire people like Rachel Levine. And governance means you have to put people like Rachel Levine on your board. If you're not doing all three things, you get a low ESG score. And what does that do? Well, you have BlackRock, which is the largest money manager in the world. It has about $9 trillion under management. Larry Fink is the head. Larry Fink has said to corporate CEOs, if you don't have a high enough ESG score, you will not get corporate loans and you will not be able to trade your stock. So all the companies are flocking to improve their ESG scores. And if you look on their websites, you'll see they're all bragging about their ESG scores. It's all phony baloney, and it's coming apart because West Virginia just announced that it's going to pull all of its money, $1.5 billion, out of BlackRock. Texas is doing the same thing, and New Hampshire is in the midst of passing a law that says it is against the law in New Hampshire to use ESG to rank companies and to use that as a basis for funding them. It's also for individuals, Wendy. So if you can have an individual ESG score too. So if you belong to the NRA, if you eat red meat, if you have a gasoline-powered car, you as an individual get a low ESG score, which means you won't be able to get a car loan, you won't be able to get a mortgage, and you might be denied an apartment because it's like a social credit score that they have in China. That is what's happening in this country. And as a result, these companies and these organizations are dumbing down Americans. We're going from the best and the brightest to the worst and the dullest. And it's going to be the end of competitiveness. Because if you have this pervasive enough, then America will not be able to compete anymore with countries like China.
Well, and if you think about it, by the way, everything you just said, I'm sitting here speechless, enraptured by what you're saying. And I want to ask you, is there anyone out there who doesn't suck? Because literally, I feel like I'm on an island and everything around us is swirling with garbage and corruption and crap. And I want to ask you, a Carhartt, when they're going to eliminate the people that they want to eliminate, you're eliminating the people who are free thinkers, independent thinkers, the people you want, right?
I just met yesterday for lunch with an executive of a top wealth management firm. And this firm has a rule that the unvaccinated people have to work from home. He told me the unvaccinated people in his company are the best producers, the top producers. Why is that? Because they're independent thinkers. Independent thinkers are the enemy of the Marxists. And that's what Joe Biden represents. He's a Marxist because he's aligned with China. The World Economic Forum had its annual meeting this week in Davos, Switzerland. Who was the keynote speaker? Xi Jinping. And who was one of the other speakers? Anthony Fauci. Now, let's look at another aspect of this. We have the vaccine, which is the only thing that we have the vaxocrats. That's all they care about. They don't care about therapeutics. They only care about the vaccine. Let's look at what's another thing that's happening here. You have Jim Smith, who's the CEO of Thomson Reuters, which is one of the top news dissemination organizations in America, along with AP, the Associated Press. Jim Smith is on the board of Pfizer. He's also on the International Business Council of the World Economic Forum. It's all tied together. That means that Reuters will only disseminate the news about Pfizer that Pfizer wants to be disseminated. That's why Americans are not getting the full picture. Okay, let's look at Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is one of the preeminent conservative thinkers in the world. He just quit the University of Toronto. He was a tenured professor. Why? Because of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. He said, this appalling ideology is demolishing education and business. And he said, because we can't hire enough of these DEI employees because they're too stupid, we're out to produce a generation of researchers utterly unqualified for the job. Now, he wrote this big essay on the National Post out of Canada. It's worth reading. But the thing is, this is destroying everything because they want people to be dumbbells so they can be malleable marshmallows. The World Economic Forum has said that capitalism is over, of course, except for the elitists. And in the future, you won't be able to own anything, and you will like it. That's what the Great Reset is. Now, Joe Biden has been promoting this Build Back Better, which I call Build Back Redder, as in China, redder. But the Build Back Better is something that Joe Biden acts like he created, but he didn't. It comes from the World Economic Forum. And every country that's becoming a Marxist nation is using Build Back Better. But it's a euphemism for the Great Reset, which means we push a button and overnight, your country becomes Marxist. And that's what's happening here. That's why they wanted to gut the middle class. One of the reasons they hate Donald Trump is because Donald Trump was strengthening the middle class. And if you read Victor Davis Hanson's great book, The Dying Citizen, he goes back to the ancient Greek and Roman times, where he says, since then they knew if you did not have a strong middle class, you could not have a successful culture. So the Democrats want to gut the middle class so that there will be a feudal society with the lords on top and the serfs on the bottom. And that's what we see happening here.
Well, I think one could argue that's why our southern border is wide open. They want to bring in that serfdom. I could sit here forever. Mark, do you have another 5 minutes to hang with me after this break?
Absolutely.
I don't even want to say a word. I just want to keep hearing you talk. Literally, it's been fascinating. Marc Rudov, branding expert and media commentator. Obviously, Cat knows what's going on. I love this. All right, back to the Wendy Bell Radio program. And Marc Rudov, branding expert. I'm fascinated by what you say, Mark, and I'm questioning now. So with the CDC's new data yesterday, that yes, in fact, what we've been saying here for a long time is true, that people who have natural immunity from prior infection are super protected. Is the narrative going to unravel? What happens next in your crystal ball?
Well, first of all, I want to remind everybody you can visit me at marcrudov.com. That's marcrudov.com. And the thing is that what the CDC says is irrelevant because natural immunity doesn't make Pfizer any money. And that's what's important. It's the money. And I don't know how long Joe Biden's going to be able to maintain this charade. But too much information is getting out, and that's why people are protesting in all European capitals. They're protesting in Australia and getting thrown in jail for it. But it is unraveling, but Joe Biden's not going to stop. And the other thing I want to mention that I didn't get in before the break, Wendy, is that the Navy has thrown out 5,700 sailors, the Army 3,800 soldiers, the Air Force 27 airmen, and the Marines 206 troops over this vaccine mandate. They're trying to gut the independent thinkers. They want people who are compliant and obedient, whether it's in universities, corporations, government, the military, everywhere. And this whole vaccine bit is about power and control. It has nothing to do with science, nothing to do with medicine. It's all about power and control. When you have a guy like Joe Biden who's never accomplished anything in his life, and when he ran for president, 3 times and didn't make it because nobody likes him, the way he got in this time, we know, was underhanded. I mean, a guy who never campaigned and got more votes than Obama. And I said this on Newsmax a year ago, that he was going to rule by fiat. He was not going to be a leader because he's not a leader. And you can tell somebody who's actually been elected properly, who's a real victor, because he's happy. He's ebullient. Joe Biden is always angry. He's angry because he knows he didn't win, and he knows that we know he didn't win. And he knows that he's an empty suit. He has nothing to contribute, and that's why he's always angry. He's an imposter. So everything he does is phony, and he's destroying this country. And I think that Xi Jinping has the goods on Joe. He has documents, he has audio, he has video. And he said to Joe, you are going to fail, or I'm going to expose you and your son. And that's why you're going to get out of Afghanistan and make America look terrible. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to take over Bagram Air Force Base, and I'm going to get the rare earth minerals in Afghanistan so I can make batteries for your stupid electric cars in America, something else that's woke, because the people who buy electric cars are so dumb they don't realize that they're powered by coal and natural gas and nuclear. I mean, it's all so dumb. But as soon as Starbucks announced that it's going to drop the vax mandate, all the lefties ran to Twitter to say, I'm not going to shop at Starbucks anymore. I don't want a barista who's infected to be handing me coffee. And so this is what's happening. And to your earlier point, there are still patriots in this country, and they are fighting back. I gave you the examples of West Virginia, Texas, and New Hampshire. You saw what the parents did in Loudoun, Virginia. So people are fighting back. And also Gallup just announced the other day that 47% of Americans are now leaning Republican and only 42% Democrat. So Joe Biden has converted Democrats into Republicans. So that's one of his major accomplishments for the time he's been in the Oval Office.
I enjoy you so much. I can't even begin to tell you. And I'd love to have you back here soon. So, Marc Rudov, tell everybody how they can find you again.
Again, go to marcrudov.com, MarcRudov.com.
Well,
and I look forward to hearing from you.
Amen. Thank you so much for your expertise and your knowledge here. Appreciate having you.
Thank you, Wendy. It's been a pleasure.
Talk to you soon.